Well, welcome to A Spirited Debate. I'm Lauren Green. Christian communities across the Middle East increasingly fear their very existence against extremist movements in the region like ISIS. There are new calls to protect religious minorities before it's too late, as some question whether a Christian Holocaust has begun. Here with his insight is Johnnie Moore, author of Defying ISIS. Welcome, Johnnie.
Hey, Lauren. Thanks for having me.
Because you use the phrase Christian Holocaust. Is that too strong a phrase, or is that not strong enough?
You know, it's not even my phrase. It's the phrase that comes from the region. And by the way, the United Nations, has openly said that it's a genocide. And so, and actually, there are lots of parallels when you look at what's happening. The fact that ISIS was putting the in for Nazarene in the homes of the Christians, they were specifically targeting them. The fact that 10 Christian villages 2 weeks ago along the Khabur River in Syria, they've been paying the ISIS tax for a year. I mean, they had submitted to the rules of this authority, and then that suddenly wasn't enough. So ISIS round up 300 of them, and we don't know what's happened to them. Not to mention those they've killed indiscriminately, and houses that they've burnt down, and churches they've destroyed. It is definitely targeted, it is definitely significant, and it's been happening a long time.
Why is Christianity such a threat to ISIS? I mean, it's such a minority, but are they a threat to ISIS, or they are just getting caught in the crossfire between the various factions of Islam?
Well, I mean, it's true that ISIS are made of equal opportunity psychopaths, right? I mean, they've killed more Muslims than anyone else. They've targeted all the religious minorities. But it's also true they take particular interest in Christians. In fact, every single time Baghdadi, the leader of ISIS, speaks, he speaks directly about marching all the way to Rome. When the beheading of those 21 Copts garnered the attention of the entire world, that video was entitled A Message in Blood Written to the Nation of the Cross. On the front page of the ISIS magazine in October, there was a picture of St. Peter's Square with an ISIS flag superimposed atop the obelisk. Like, every way you look at it, every time Baghdadi speaks, every time anyone from ISIS speaks, they talk specifically about targeting the Christians. And, by the way, what people don't realize is Baghdadi took charge of this organization in May of 2010. And the first significant thing he did was attack a famous Catholic church in Baghdad back in 2010. He doesn't believe he's starting a Christian Holocaust. He believes he's finishing it.
It's scarier in the fact that we got this group, ACAP, which is the Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. And they're supposed to be quite dangerous, but one of the most dangerous things about them is that their focus is on the U.S. mainland. And, of course, we've got these people in America being arrested for being a part of ISIS. So how dangerous is these factions to the U.S. itself?
Well, actually, it's much more dangerous than we realize. And by the way, there's been a lot more news about this than we realize. I mean, of course, you're referencing what just happened just yesterday when 2 ISIS sympathizers were arrested in Chicago trying to travel to Syria. And we forget last week a United States Air Force vet was trying to do the same thing. We forget that last week a man charged the cockpit of a United Airlines flight screaming jihad. And by the way, in the last year, we had a beheading in Oklahoma City. We had police officers attacked in Brooklyn. We had other ISIS sympathizers trying to travel from Brooklyn. I mean, 2 weeks ago, we had a 17-year-old arrested for trying to recruit for ISIS. I mean, it just goes on and on. And then the really, really scary things, like, the University of Milan studied Arabic language tweets with the acronym ISIS in them. And 1 out of 5 of those tweets in the United States of America was in support of ISIS. I mean, these are really, really precarious facts. And the difference between ISIS and Al-Qaeda is you used to have to go to Afghanistan to get trained. Now, you sit in front of your computer screen.
Johnnie, this is bringing up some really, really scary stuff. And the question is, what can be done? Why, and what should be done? What should the U.S. be doing? What should Americans be demanding the U.S. do?
Well, I think on a personal level, individuals need to be more involved. They need to rally to this cause. People of faith like myself, we need to pray and to provide humanitarian assistance to those that are in harm's way. But as individuals, we need to put unrelenting pressure on the United States government and the governments of all influential powers in the world to do more and to do it more quickly. The fact is, the governments of the world, the most influential ones, underestimated this threat. They didn't act quickly enough. They thought the Middle East, Syria in particular, would take care of itself. And that gave us ISIS. And this is what's so remarkable. I mean, 10 years ago, we couldn't have imagined any terrorist group worse than Al-Qaeda. And now we have a terrorist group that's so brutal, they've been excommunicated by ISIS, by Al-Qaeda. And you can rest assured that they will absolutely do here what they've done there if they have the chance. And now is the time for the United States and others to do more before it's too late.
All right, Johnny, I want to thank you so much for being on A Spirited Debate. If you want more insight, check out Johnny's book. It's called Defying ISIS. Author Johnnie Moore, thank you so much for being on A Spirited Debate.
Thanks for having me, Lori.
You know, it's scary. You just want to rise up and say, please do something. And I wanted to ask you the question, too, Johnny, just a real quick thing about, is the U.S. kind of leading from behind? Why isn't the U.S. making more of a statement about the persecution of Christians? Why do you think?
Well, I think there's this general anxiety about the religious nature of this conflict. And, and by the way, for sure, from a Western perspective, this is not a holy war. But for sure, from an ISIS perspective, it is a holy war. And we're not doing ourselves a favor by not calling it what it is. And by the way, when you start understanding the religious nature of all of this, then you have the intel to move in a strategic way.
All right. Thanks so much, Johnny. We're going to lose our satellite. But thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.